And we just heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaking at the Summit for Democracy in Seoul. To talk about it, joining us is Dr. Rajan Kumar from School of International Studies, JNU. Good evening and welcome, Dr. Kumar. Prime Minister just showed the manner in which India stands as an example of how democracy delivers, democracy empowers. What were your key takeaways from his message?
Thank you, Shubhendu, for having me here and for very important topic, democracy, not usually discussed in media. There are a few messages which are very important from India's perspective, from what Prime Minister also spoke from that perspective. First, there is a sense globally that there is an expansion of authoritarian countries. The second, that there is a general feeling that democracy is in decline in a number of countries, also in established democracy and also in the emerging democracy. So that's number two. And there are certain reasons which are being considered by experts as the reason why democracy is declining. Number one is the rampant corruption. The second one is the rise of anti-liberal populist parties. Third is the breakdown of the rule of law in many countries, emerging countries included. And also the fourth and the very important from today's this South Korea's Democracy Summit perspective is the rise of China, which has created a new balance of power. And China it started offering a model of development to a number of countries in Asia and Africa, especially the Indo-Pacific region, where they thought that authoritarian countries are doing economically very well, because Chinese economy per capita income GDP that expanded from 1990 to 2007, it expanded roughly 16 times. So that created a wrong example. But now what is happening? There's a sense in the established democracy that that democracy has to be restored. It has to be saved. The freedom of speech internationally, that has to be protected. So because of that, President Biden, when he became the president 2020 onwards, so he started this summit. And what you saw today, when Prime Minister spoke, this was the third chapter. So why this message from India is important? Because India is a model of democracy and development and diversity taken together. So these three Ds are very important, not only for India, but also for the countries of the global South. Because now India is emerging as a model, and India's democracy is delivering. It's not just democracy, chaotic democracy that we used to hear in the past, but also we have democracy with diversity, but also economic development. So that is an important message which would convey a kind of model for a large number of countries which would gravitate towards country like South Korea, which is also a democracy, which is the host of this summit, and countries like India, which is providing a model for these countries. So this is very important democracy, right. And the message given by India is extremely important.
And Dr. Kumar, the premise of this summit, that democracy is in the decline in many parts of the world, as you mentioned. At a time like this, nearly 1 billion people are going to be participating in the world's largest democratic elections in a few weeks from now in India. In that context, in the global context, how does the elections in India become all the more important?
Definitely, we have. This is the year of election, the very powerful democracy. Because just a few days back, you had election in Russia. And now, in next month, our election process will start in India, the biggest democracy in the world. And then also, towards the end of this year, you will have the election, in the United States. So what you see that, there are different types of models which are emerging. Russia is clearly an authoritarian state. It's not a democracy. And in democracies, one of the indicators, the powerful indicator, is the chances of possibility of change of the government. You see that despite all the support that the present government in India, they are fighting very hard to remain in power. Campaigning has started, as you know. So India's model, where we have we are not just procedural democracy, we are substantive democracy, where freedom of expression is protected, the rights of minority are protected. We have separation of power. Yes, we have certain issues also, but our democracy is functioning and is delivering. So from that perspective, I think this year is the year of election, and the summit which you saw just in Korea. So that summit is also important because South Korea is trying to send a very powerful message that democracy is not only in the Western countries, but also there are non-Western countries which are which are highly democratic and which are doing well in terms of economy, in terms of promotion of soft power, in terms of cultural expansion, etc. And they can work as a bulwark against the authoritarian expansionism. And I'm referring specifically to China, because China is the most important country in Indo-Pacific, and Chinese model is a problem for a large number of countries, large number of democracies in the neighborhood, be it Japan, be it South Korea, be it India, and other democracies in Southeast Asia. So for that reason, I think democracies should come together, and they have to ideologically as well as in terms of implementation of program, they have to stop the expansion of Chinese influence in the region.
Dr. Kumar, one of the underlining themes of this democracy summit is our digital threats to freedom. It's articulated in the form of AI, artificial intelligence, misinformation. One could understand them as fake news. On the other hand, when Prime Minister was speaking about technology, he mentioned the manner in which India has been able to use technology, use innovation as an enabling force in democracy. How do you read the contrast?
I think this is very important. There are two issues, Shubhendu. One that you are talking about the technology and how technology has created, an access to this democratic dividends, be it empowerment of the people, be it distribution of resources, etc. And India has very successfully kind of, as far as through the banking, democratization in the process of banking, democratization in the process of access to digital finance, etc. So India has done very, very well as far as this expansion of technology is concerned, but also also other countries where South Korea is also hosting the AI summit this year, and as you said that there is a huge concern that misinformation has become very prevalent in number of countries, and that is leading to some kind of the authoritarian countries are doing much better in terms of expanding the propaganda and creating misinformation for the people, and not giving the right information about the resources or about the programs, etc. So in that context, I think India has done very well as far as access to digital financing, etc., is concerned, and that is an important model for the countries of the global South. And also in checking corruption, one important message that you asked in the first part of your question, that what is the important message? So apart from accountability, freedom of expression, democracy, etc., human rights, etc., other message which is integrated with this entire democracy summit is the issue of checking corruption. Corruption is an important issue which is being discussed in all three summits on democracy, and they are talking about the accountability, they are talking about transparency in the international financial system, and also checking some of the the way Bitcoin, etc., are operating, the way they are being used by the terrorist organization, etc. So these are important issues and messages being sent through this what you call democracy summit.
And another point, Dr. Kumar, that Prime Minister articulates in his message is what Indian democracy does, not just for itself, for the country, but also for the world. You mentioned the Global South earlier. India's G20 presidency saw the kind of centrality to Global South that India worked towards, whether it's climate justice or reforms at UNSC or more. The priority of the Global Souths have been the priorities of India as well. So in that sense, also using the power of democracy to further the cause, the right cause in the world.
Absolutely. What India is trying to convey to the world, that the international institutions must democratize. It cannot be the way it was, because most of the institutions, be it IMF, World Bank, United Nations Security Council, they are the products of post-World War II situation. And that has changed. Now countries, like India, Brazil, Japan, etc., these countries have become very influential in terms of their global influence, in terms of their economy, in terms of their military, in terms of their disaster management, climate change, etc. So the international institutions must democratize, and India has reiterated this in several forums, including today's forum. That's one part. Second, that we need to bridge the gap of disparity. What has happened in the last 2-3 decades, that per capita income has increased, but the disparity has also increased across the world. And because of that, you see the rise of populist parties which follow a very hardcore majoritarian kind of policy. So unless until you bridge the gap between the poor and the rich, the right-wing parties will take advantage of that. And we have seen that in the United States. You are seeing the rise of right-wing parties in Hungary, Poland, a number of European countries, France, Sweden, etc. So the message is also that democracy is important, but democracy cannot sustain without delivery. So and kind of empowering the people through financial deliberation, through financial sharing of resources. So that is important message that has to be delivered, and also on the issue of security, crime, etc. So these are the important issues which were discussed in the summit, and these are important. But again, the implementation is very important. Democratic deliberation is important, but what is missing, in my view, that these summits do not have the way to implement the policies on which they take the decision. So I think they're also talking about at least implementing some part of the deliberation, especially related to transparency, accountability, and corruption, and they're expecting some kind of commitment from the countries which are participating.
On that note, Dr. Rajan Kumar, thank you very much for joining us on News Hour, sharing your perspective.